Welcome to today's episode of CLCI Live, brought to you by the award-winning and ICF accredited school, Certified Life Coach Institute. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode.
Hi everybody, hello and welcome. Welcome to another week of CLCI Live. Today is an exciting topic for us. We're going to be discussing something that I think none of us are absolutely experts in, but something we have been studying for a short amount of time, AI and coaching. Coach, will you be replaced by a robot is what we have titled there, which is a little scary. So let's why don't we dive right in, shall we, guys? But let's dive right in with a little bit of a softer approach. Or what defines AI? What is the definition? What is the end all be all definition of artificial intelligence? Because I think that we as people think it is one thing and think it is a lot scarier than it actually is, and think it's a lot further off than realize it's something we use on a daily basis. So anybody takers?
Basic definition of AI, it just stands for artificial intelligence. So we just those two words alone, there's a big can of worms involved in those two terms, but we know what intelligence is. We see it all the time. People are intelligent, whether, sometimes they're not. But in general, people have intelligence. Animals have intelligence to certain degrees. The artificial bit comes in where it's not natural, it's created by humans, assuming it's created. So it's something that is intelligent, it can think on its own, but it is created by humans and maybe with a purpose, maybe without a purpose. That's my basic understanding of AI.
I would argue just on that we always are creating artificial intelligence with some kind of purpose in mind. I mean, otherwise, what would we be like? There's a purpose there.
What do you mean by we're always creating things with a purpose in terms of AI or?
In terms of AI, yeah. What?
How? What example?
Well, why would anybody sit down to create anything in a technological space if it wasn't for a reason? Even if it was just to entertain them.
Well, from the book that I read, which was not part of our homework, but this book, it goes into some examples of how AI can accidentally happen.
Oh, well.
It's not intended to make a artificial intelligence, but as systems get more and more complicated, it just sort of, arises, which is very similar to how people think, evolution came about. Like, we didn't just one day become intelligent human beings, at least speaking just evolution. It slowly came about sort of accidentally, same way it could happen for, artificial systems.
Sorry, just reading something. Also, I completely forgot to say something, and we'll come back to this right now. Those of you watching, hi out there, please leave comments. We want to hear from you. This is live so that we can interact with you, and we want you to be a part of this discussion. So please join in the conversation. On that note, on that wonderful definition of what artificial intelligence is, which, just to recap, it's technological. And do we want to say intelligence? That's just saying the same thing.
I wouldn't even say technological. It doesn't have to be technological.
It doesn't have to be just non-natural learning, essentially, almost is what we could call it. Before we delve into the scary parts of it, hi Natasha, hi Michael. Is it Mikkel? I bet it's Mikkel. So what is it about AI, or what are examples of AI that we use currently that we're probably comfortable with already?
Your smartphone's got to be the biggest one, I would say. I like to think sometimes as that, and honestly, our phones are an extension of ourselves. So sometimes I kind of imagine us as being a version of artificial intelligence due to that. Our computers, which if anyone works in an office, you use that on a daily basis. Some smart cars.
Well, so And also to that note, you just said your phones have a mechanism that learns how you speak and predicts, I mean, predictive text. That right there is very much personalized to you and the way you speak and the way you type things. So AI and learning right there, right?
Different programs that you and I, Brooke, were setting up. We each were assigned a different name as we were investigating things. That was all an AI system that is integrating in many areas. One of the areas that I was reading that is growing even faster is it working with attention deficit disorder. They tend to utilize that system. Go ahead. I know you're.
No. I'm just saying ADD right here.
They have found that it's very successful with the students. Excuse my voice. I have a cold.
um, any other examples of ways AI we use it on a daily basis?
Starting out, self-driving cars.
That's
There are
terrifying.
some on the road with us already. A friend has a friend who has a car that drives itself on the freeways, which is terrifying sounding. But when you think about it, it probably drives better than, probably 90% of other drivers on the road. It's just sort of that trust issue that we have sometimes with AI and robotics.
Well, and that brings us right into the next topic / question is why is it that we are scared of AI? Like I mean, we said, Coach, what is it that makes us innately go, oh my God, there's Terminator T2. We are scared of technology. Why is that exactly?
Because none of you guys can hear this, but they could take our jobs. Yeah, AI does a lot of things better than, or what we hope AI can do is do a lot of things better than pretty much any normal person is capable of. With the self-driving cars, they can drive better and safer than us, probably 99% of the time. Where that might be a bad thing is what if the entire trucking industry is based off of AI self-driving trucks? Then a whole lot of people are out of a job. So that's one scary aspect with AI. Do you guys have any other?
I will say, to argue that point, though, they're saying that within the next, I think it's by 2025, AI will actually also create 97 million jobs. So there's always two sides to the coin. It just maybe what will happen is we're going to have to, I guess, adapt and find maybe different things to do.
As far as fear is concerned, here's one that might be hard to rebuttal. Maybe I would assume there's a portion of the population that might be afraid of AI becoming so smart that they're no longer obedient to us. But obviously, in a bunch of sci-fi movies that I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with, where they become the dominant, I guess, species, for lack of better words, in this space where we no longer have control over them. They are potential, like for Terminator that came up already. Maybe they're going to eventually try and find their way at the top of the food chain in society.
Well, first and foremost, there's a lot of assuming going on in there.
Exactly.
Like what would the robot's motivation be exactly? Like we would have to program a robot to be despise us as human beings essentially and have murderous intentions, unless we're saying that somehow they would develop that, but that's also a very human kind of thing, which is funny. Now I was just pulling up a quote so there are varying levels of artificial intelligence. So when we talk about the kind of AI that Jerome is talking about, would be super artificial intelligence, and we aren't there yet. That doesn't exist yet. Where the machines are basically don't rely on us in some capacity. The reality is, as it stands right now, we still have to be there as a human being to program them. But that can change. Thoughts?
I can tell you what my fear with AI is.
Uh-huh.
So when it comes obviously from TV and movies, but how far is too far? What's the boundary? Like when you think of Westworld, how far are we willing to go with it? There's also a show that I love called Humans, and it just pushes, the boundaries of what we're potentially capable of. And I don't know about you, but it scared the crap out of me.
I'm in this space. I'm like, let's just go all the way. Let's just put humanity to the side. We've had our time in the limelight. Just let the AIs do their own thing. If that means making us all go extinct, it's probably for the best.
I think there's an aspect of also maybe being too reliant on AI. What's that movie? Wall-E. That's a good interpretation of pretty much the artificial intelligence and robots. They're so integral in our lives to the point where humans are like 500 plus pounds and they don't have to do anything but sit on their chairs all day while everything else is automated. So maybe there's that fear of us losing our humanity in a sense. That would be something else that I think could come up.
So now we're going to bring this back around to coaching, in the coaching space. So we've discussed why it's scary. We've discussed all of these things. Within coaching, what is it? Well, let's first talk about where AI exists in the coaching space, because it does. AI is happening in the coaching realm. Thoughts? I was just going to answer my own question and then decided to let you guys do it.
Well, certainly not to the degree where I think it's like, I guess, believable that you're working with a coach. It seems more like, from what I've seen, for like any sort of automated, like I have a goal or a question and it spits back information back to me, it definitely feels like I'm just working with like a program or some sort of online like questionnaire that doesn't feel like coaching.
I will say I recently had that experience. I signed up for a program for a different reason, but they were like, "Oh, you get a coach," and I was like, "Well, this will be fun. Let's see how it goes." And they sent me a message, and then I responded to the message, but there was no response back. And then I responded again, and there was no. And I was like, "This is a bot." And now I'm annoyed because you have just sent me a picture pretending to be a person, and it is very clearly a bot. And that to me is a deception that was just. It annoyed the crap out of me. Be honest about that. But again, like Anthony said, it's not going to give me, at least if the technology isn't there, in my opinion, where I don't know or can't figure out very quickly that it is a robot I'm working with or talking to. Not to say that technology won't change and we won't get to that point.
Yeah, so that's what's called the Turing test, which is, it's a test applied to determine whether or not a normal person could identify if a AI was human or not. And if you can't identify whether or not it's human, then it passes the Turing test. If you immediately find out and you get the sneaking suspicion that, oh, this is probably like an AI or robot I'm talking about, doesn't pass. And that's sort of like the gold standard when people try to come up with like human level AI, which I don't think we've gotten there yet, at least from what I've seen.
No, I don't think so. But that's, again, not to say something that we want to rest our laurels on, because one of the things that to keep in mind is that technology moves at, like I was just telling Lisa this, if this is the angle for technology development, this is the line for us using it and integrating it. So technology develops exponentially faster than we as a human species can actually utilize that technology. And so it would be remiss of us to think that well, because it doesn't exist today, that it won't exist, and probably far sooner than we expect or even are ready for. But does that mean that robots will replace the human coach?
I don't think so. I don't think that this is replaceable. I don't think that the human to human connection is replaceable by AI at all. So I'm not scared of what it means for coaching, even in the slightest.
But have you had a connection that was not human to human connection to like compare it to, though? in terms of coaching, though, like the only thing we have to compare is human to human.
So we don't
What
know,
I'm
right?
sort of getting at is, what if human to AI turns out to be better? Um,
So that
I
was
think I would
is
have
what-
to I would have to want to connect with AI. And
Mhm.
if I don't want to connect with AI, it's never going to happen.
so so the in the this I was just recently watching an interview with a gentleman who had done a whole bunch of, basically it's been studying this very topic for a while, and there was two conflicting arguments. One that we hear from Jen, which is the argument that we as people and as coaches want to believe that that empathetic, that human to human, that thing that is unique and special, and it's something people want and crave. The other side of the coin is one of the experts who coaches that has been using AI coaching said that more than 50% of the people who use it actually prefer the AI for a few reasons, because, and this is that just, but I mean, more than 50 is a significant amount, but still we're half and half. But because they can access it at any time, they don't have to worry about a schedule or anything like that. So if they're having a crisis or a question, the AI is always there, and it will always answer its question day or night, 24 hours a day. Also, too, it's a level of autonomy and sort of non-judgment that you can't get with a human being 100%, because there's always that thought process in the back of our head that we're being judged. But when you're dealing with a robot, there's no judgment there being made. So it's kind of this weird balance, right? What do you want? And I think that really comes down to knowing who your client is and what your client wants. Good point that he brought up, though, in this whole thing, was that within that space, though, where the technology certainly is not and is far off from is when you get into more expert coaching. So coaching more expert and complicated topics, when you're dealing with all kinds of nuances and personalities and all these things, and having to take that into account. And so the more complex your coaching is, the safer you'll be in this space. Whereas just straightforward, like sort of linear, more generic, general kind of coaching is really the one that's more, I guess, at risk in this space, if that makes sense. Thoughts or feelings in that regard?
I mean, we're talking kind of about a hypothetical, like where AI currently is right now. I don't even think it's at the standard where it can handle the simple level coaching. But if we talk about the hypothetical possibilities with AI, I don't see a reason why it couldn't tackle the more complicated, I guess, techniques of coaching. I don't see why it wouldn't be able to do that, or do it even better than, I guess, a human coach would, or at least equivalent.
I guess what they are sort of what he was when he talks about that and speaking in that realm. When you're dealing, like, let's say, with corporate coaching, you've got to be able to understand levels, I guess, of human interaction and sort of societal, just sort of the things that how do you program personalities, not, and who somebody is in certain particular situations, these very specific kind of things that have complex levels. So when you're looking at, like, in corporate coaching, you're thinking about not only staff and personality, but also money coming in, opportunity, strategy. There's a whole bunch of elements that, how do me as a client communicate the sort of basic social structures that exist to an AI so that they would understand, because there's some subtlety and nuance in there that maybe, like you said, even now we're not getting. Subtlety and nuance is lost in many ways in an AI space still. Is that correct? I mean, would you agree with that? Or
Yeah, I would. I mean, that's a lot to take in, but I would agree with
right?
you. I would just also say people are not the best at subtlety and nuances as is.
True.
A human coach, and it feels weird to say that, human coach. That is a skill that takes a long time to develop as a coach, is identifying the subtleties and nuances in your client's behavior and trying to figure out the right question to ask based on that, and not knowing really if you made the right decision or not. So that's not something that I don't think humans innately have in themselves, is that just like yep, we got it. We know subtlety and nuance, better than anything else. I don't think we're really that good at it to
I
begin
think
with.
as you're sharing that, I'm also thinking, like when we talk about PCC level coaching and what PCC level coaching is, we really get into that sort of listening behind the question, listening to, and I guess you could program something to know, like detect if the voice inflection and things like that, but and to learn language, like our text and our text to learn, or what is that, predictive text, so that they can then mirror and do things like that. I think though that element of asking behind the question, which is something we teach, is that sort of, it's an advanced level of understanding, an advanced level of human understanding, that could be more difficult for a robot to easily know. But who knows, really,
It
honestly.
could. I would argue it could be easier for them to know. Because, okay, now I'm going into like very sci-fi levels of thought here. But what if you could have an AI coach that could measure your heart rate, measure the different hormones going through your body, like cortisol if you're stressed? What if it could measure your brain waves as you're talking throughout the conversation?
I see you are stressed, Anthony.
My mind just went to like a whole different, inappropriate direction. But yeah, there's the argument to be made that an AI could do that better too. See the behind the scenes, and we're talking now like we're mixing psychology and psychiatry into this,
Physiology as well. I mean,
physiology into coaching that not really any coach can give right now.
I know that Lisa has used technology in her practices before. You want to share about that?
Well, I've also been trained in neurofeedback and contemplated using that as well as something as simple as the oh gosh, now I've forgotten the oximeter. Am I saying that correctly? I'm not hearing it correctly. Anyway, where it measures your oxygen rate, your pulse rate, and we've definitely used it in my coaching sessions for the client to be much more aware of where they're coming from. I never did utilize the neurofeedback system. It was a big debate in my head on whether or not I wanted to follow through with that. But the simple little oximeter worked really well to allow that biofeedback.
Because I mean, from what you had told me, it was in real time that the client could recognize on their own if their heart rate was increasing, if their breathing had changed, and it was a way for them to identify sort of on their own the physical changes that they have in the moment, and sort of that can be addressed if they wanted to address why that might be happening.
Or know that wasn't the time to have a discussion, because it would be an easily side towards triggering.
You're talking about couples coaching. So if his heart rate is now suddenly racing, and maybe this is a topic we want to sort of be delicate with right now, which is a smart use of those tools. So, I mean, in that space and on that note, that's a great example of we're innately, our gut shot reaction, I think, is always at first to go, oh my God, tech is going to replace us. There's a space that this could happen. What do we do? Oh my God. I think though, and this is a prediction, what will define successful coaches in the future from the ones that sort of will fizzle out, pop the buzz bubble, as it were, are the coaches that are willing to embrace tech, utilize it, figure out how to integrate AI in a way that is beneficial to them and beneficial to them in their practices. And I think that will make a big, I guess, division between who really is able to really thrive in the future versus the coaches who will not be able to. As I was listening to this interview, it just became more and more apparent to me how important it is to stay in an adaptive space and be willing to embrace that technology, because ultimately, if we had technology to answer every email, to do all of auto do everything for us, mind you, we might say, oh no, we wouldn't have a job, but maybe instead we would have a job doing something far more productive. Like we would be able to take our time and utilize our time and expertise in ways that is far more satisfying than maybe doing those sort of monotonous tasks that someone like me with ADD abhor.
So I've got a question then that might get to the heart of why maybe AI coaching will not be something viable in the future. And my question is, what is the difference between now consulting and coaching? I know it's a hypothetical question, but what is someone getting out of consulting
Yeah.
versus what they're getting out of coaching?
Well, I mean, with consulting, you expect the consultant to have a level of expertise, so they're going to give you answers.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with coaching, we are not giving answers. Well, we are assisting in the discovery of answers.
Mm-hmm.
And the expertise is going to help us follow that flow where that client is going. So still being the expert by receiving that information and having the ability to bounce back and ask that client.
So then my question is, why would I, if I have the option between getting an answer immediately or discovering the answers for myself, why would I ever choose discovering the answers for myself? Why wouldn't I every single time choose to have the answer immediately before me and have that answer hopefully be correct?
Sustainability of that process, I would say, kind of like going back to what does it take a man to fish? You feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, feed him for a lifetime. I think having an understanding of how to get to that answer, to get to that solution, is, if you can understand it, bounds more, valuable than just getting a one-off type explanation solution at that time immediately.
That's, what's funny is this just reminds me of something that I went camping, and like camping where you had no cell reception, like where nobody could Google anything. And let me tell you, the arguments never ended. Like because the utilization of Google is there's a big meme of mine. Like nobody told me that growing up and being an adult was going to mean I just Google the answers to everything. Essentially, that is what we have that at our fingertips now to some degree. We can just type in and get our answer. Mind you, does it always mean we listen? No. Does it always mean that we're going to buy it or believe it? No. There's a lot of distrust that goes on in those spaces, which I think is why we tend to prefer to sort of test and come up with the answers ourselves. And my dad would say life is just a whole bunch of trial and error. Like that is what life is. It is you try it, it works, or it doesn't, you learn and you try something else. Like that's how you keep going, and that's what life is. And that's how we learn as human beings. And I think that we can't just throw out that inclination of the desire for us to learn and have ownership and maybe even come up with something that we feel like is uniquely ours or new to us. We own it. The only idea somebody likes better than a good idea is their own idea.
So that's the point I was trying to get at with my hypothetical questions, bro. People don't seem to be buying and becoming clients for coaches just for the sole reason of achieving their goal. They're also they're pretty much buying the satisfaction of coming up with an answer themselves and doing the work themselves, which a consultant doesn't really, and we're talking now AI consultant, an AI consultant wouldn't really provide you that sort of, I guess that innately emotional response of, I accomplished this myself through coming up with my own solutions, which is why maybe AI coaching will not be as viable as we think it is in the future, because an AI would be able to hypothetically be the expert that could provide super specific answers and goals for you at a moment's notice.
Although I think the way that they're programming AI coaches is to just be the question asker. Mm-hmm. It's programmed just to ask questions and not to actually offer anything, but to just ask those questions. And so from a database of questions, it pulls what it, for whatever reason, thinks is the correct question in that particular situation. That, though, right there explains why expertise is critical, doesn't it? Because if we have a very specific thing we want to work on, maybe a general bot that can, go through a database of questions may not have the nuance, that very specific, that very targeted question to ask, because it's not going to pull, those kind of specifics. You'd have to have like a coach bot for every specific situation, right?
I mean, don't we have coaches who have their own niches? Because we know that coaches can't be the expert in everything. So why couldn't I have like a program that said, okay, here's my problem, or here's the goal I want to achieve, and that matches me with an AI that's an expert in
Well,
that
that's what I
area.
mean, is we would have to have as many AIs as there were people. I mean, practically, which is where it starts to get kind of, for me, not worth the build. You know what I mean? At that point, because we can get more general, but I just think that's why it's so critical for that, for to thrive in this future space, is one, to integrate the technology, and then two, to also to be an expert in it if you can. In that space too, is there any ways that we can think of how a coach who wanted to be technically savvy might embrace technology, AI, and use it in their practices?
I'm gonna let someone else do the talking now. I've been chit-chatting too much.
I think we've already said it, though, that it can be the initiation of the beginning of the sessions, to get the details, to get what they're there for, to ask the basic questions, and then get into the more finesse of what coaching really is.
I could, yeah, I could also imagine even before then, maybe for client intake, just to kind of bypass some of that, again, that mundane process of determining whether or not you want to work with a client. Using AI could maybe kind of shorten that gap as far as working with someone and initiating first contact.
One of that was a suggestion made in the interview that I watched, is that there's a lot, usually the first session is a lot of discovery, and it's sort of this more like generic session that then brings you down to a more targeted focus, so that then you can do the deeper work, and using the AI maybe for that discovery, more general stuff. And then when you want to get into the more targeted, deeper work, that's when the human coach steps in. And as you said, intake forms, those are great. I mean, anything, email automation, scheduling.
In the comments as well.
Yes, I mean, I have an automated assistant. Like I've named her. Her name is Red, and Red tells me when my appointments are. Red makes my appointments for me. Red reminds me of my appointments, and she's very important to me. So I think that kind of embracing can make our lives easier, so we can focus on other things and focus on give us more time. Mm-hmm. We're so scared of technology, but perhaps it does wonderful things, so that we can enjoy life more and do what we want.
It can be both, right? It can be scary and also good. Both can be true.
It can also be a pain to learn. That's what I mean. Again, the learning curve. One of the things they said is the vast majority of coaches now are over 40, but they are seeing a flood of coaches that are younger, millennial coaches, and coming into the market and starting to coach. And those coaches will have a much more innate understanding, and also more openness and willingness to embrace sort of AI and technology. And you really think about it, their clients will probably be similar. So I think that there will be a natural evolution that happens in this space as well. I'm just waxing philosophic now.
Well, I've got a philosophical question then if we're looking at specifically ICF accredited AI coaches or human coaches, ethics. Would it be better, or would it seem to be better, that if there's a certain ethical guidelines that both human coaches or AI coaches have to follow, wouldn't you think that the AI coaches would be the sure bet.
They would not break it. You mean I'm not going to be sexually harassed by a robot? Is that what you're
You would
saying?
not be, unless you chose that kind of
I don't
robot
know.
to be your coach.
I might be that robot's flavor. Who knows?
Was that Brooke, the movie Interstellar, where like they could change like the humor
Yes,
settings,
the humor
change
settings
the
of Interstellar, yes.
harassment settings on your coach robot?
Yeah, exactly. Those robots are awesome.
Yeah, but like, I mean, to bring it to more serious question, like if you're looking for a coach, you want to have an ethical coach who is not going to take advantage of you or do any sort of unsavory stuff. Why not go with the AI coach?
That takes me to a deeper thought process, though, which is ethics in general, that is based on a societal construct, is it not? And so who is deciding the ethics of the robot, and who's to say those ethics align with my ethics?
Well, isn't that the case with the ICF right now? They have a code of ethics that we agree to. Whether or not they match my personal ethics, I mean, it's pretty good ethics, I'd say.
In all of this discussion, though, I can't, I'm sorry, just to interrupt, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking, at the end of the day, though, I don't want to have a conversation with a robot. I don't. Like, that's why I was so fed up, like, with that. I just don't. I mean, Alexa's cool and all, but she's not my best friend. Like, I mean, I talk to her, but we're never going to have a deep conversation. Every so often she tells me stories, but really, I know she's a robot, and it's not the same.
That word's going to be a slur in about 20 years, Brooke. The
What?
R word. The R word, robot.
Robot.
Oh, that's wow. That's a really interesting thought, Anthony. That's going to be non.
I'm sure some AI is going to get offended, like, whoa, I'm not like a robot like Alexa.
Well, that was, I mean, the movie Her is kind of in that space. Jen, I know you listened to that the Hidden Brain episode that I did, and that was, I mean, it blew my mind. It was crazy. Because we as human beings do actually form attachments to robots, and we have an attachment to Alexa. And when we name something, oh my God, we get extra attached. So, but still, I as a person would rather be working with another human being. I just would prefer that, honestly.
Why?
I'll tell you why on my end. And it was something, Brooke, you said that a robot could hold a space of non-judgment in a way a human can't. And when you said that, I thought, exactly, which is why that robot space of non-judgment, to me, it's not real. It's not a real space of non-judgment. The human space of non-judgment is what matters.
The idea of being like, I'm doing this because the robot told me to. I don't know why. And maybe that is something that is just a hang up of us humans. We need to get over it. But
what is, I'm kind of curious. I want to go deeper into that.
Okay.
What is the difference between a non-human space of non-judgment and a human space of non-judgment? What do you get from that human non-judgment that's different?
No, I think she wants human judgment. She wants that judgment.
No, I want human non-judgment. And to me, that's a special thing that another human being can offer. Like, that's a sacred space to me if someone can offer me that.
That's empathy, right? We're talking about empathy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think too, I mean, I think though, again, this is going to get us into another discussion. Judgment, we do actually want our coaches to have some judgment. We want them to have that human understanding of that human life experience that makes them be able to connect with me because they understand what it is to be a human being. Where that a robot won't ever understand what it is to be a human being. Maybe in like it can be programmed. We can try to tell it. We can, but ultimately it's not going to have a human experience the way a human being. And maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should throw this out the window. Maybe this is terrible for me to say. But ultimately, I would trust the human who has the human experience more than I would trust the robot. Part of me is saying, Brooke, you are so wrong, because I know that when they do like like assessments for like danger and things like even our judgment is so flawed, it's crazy, and easily influenced, and you can't influence a robot. But I think in the space of coaching, I don't know, I feel like I would just want another human being.
I just got done watching Blade Runner, so like everything you just said, I throw it out the window.
No, and they would tell you, so like insurance agents that they do like risk assessment. In the space of risk assessment, they have found that we are so exponentially wrong most of the time. And if you have there are robots that can do so much better, but we rail against it because the robot must be wrong. But the reality is it's right, and any flaws it has are exponentially less than the mistakes we as people make. So
right now we have airplanes flying by computer more than we have pilots flying them. And if we remember the pilot, I don't know, 10 years ago when he landed in the Hudson River,
I think, yeah, but he was
all
brilliant.
kinds of research and information to see if the computer could have done a better job, and
it's his judgment and his experience, and he was a rebel. And he saved a ton of lives. There's a great documentary, or not documentary, a podcast that sort of goes into that. That's brilliant. Yeah. The other thing too, though, is as you were saying that, it sort of clicked for me. It's a matter of emotion. So it's a matter, I think ultimately for me, I want another thing that understands what emotion is, understands what that is to be human.
Okay, let me throw that question back at you. Can you tell me what an emotion is?
Well, that's what I mean when I say feeling, like that like I shouldn't have to. I don't want to have to explain it. I want someone who knows what that is and already knows what it is.
Okay, what if the AI says what if the AI says I understand and I know what an emotion is?
I'll be like, no, you don't, because you've never felt it. Go away.
How do you know other people? Well, okay, Brooke, how do you know that other people other than yourself feel emotions?
Well, because we know that we do. We're of the same ilk.
How do you know that?
Well, I know that everybody has a different and unique experience, and we would assume. But again, I think in this space we are drawn to coaches that are like us and that are able to help us in the areas, and this is where the expertise comes in, that we can be helped, and we identify and choose them in those spaces and based around that connection that we're already forming with them. How do I choose an AI? I mean, it didn't work for me. I don't know. But mind you, now if it's for something that is non-emotional, like doesn't have anything to do, like it's just like, okay, I got to get to point C. I need something. It gets just if it's very mechanical, I guess you could say, then I can picture doing being a robot. But the moment I get to a space where it's something deeper than that, I don't want to have that emotional moment. One, alone, and two, with a robot. No, but a robot can't give me a hug.
All I'm saying is, and what I'm getting at is, I think we're putting ourselves on too high of a pedestal, and this is, if we're getting to some philosophical BS right now, I'm pretty much a materialist in the sense that there's no like spiritual like area of emotion. An emotion is like a physical process that happens in our bodies and our brain. I don't see a reason why that couldn't be the case for an AI where they also have an emotion, because it's a physical process either way. So I can't see why a robot couldn't have empathy or have emotions or give you a hug, Brooke. And then also, well, yes, I don't want my coach hugging me anyways.
There's something that and maybe maybe you're right. Maybe we can program a robot to think, feel, be, and know what a human being is, and have that 100% human experience. Why would we would want to? I don't know. Just to see if we can, I suppose. But I guess it's just that thing. It's like the argument of it's just not the same to me. And in the same way that I can't put words to it, I just feel, and maybe that'll change though. Alexa, again, she doesn't come from me. She's not like my best friend. She's here. We might have a conversation now and again, but I know it's not a person.
And that's going to be part of that growing curve that you mentioned earlier. Or I guess I got that backwards. How do you do it? Anyway, the idea that there's going to be some that do and some that don't. And at some point, that curve will get smaller, but there's probably always going to be that versus that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think maybe it comes a time that it is something we're used to, it's just, and maybe people are more comfortable. Maybe, and that's again, it's one of those places where I say there's probably room for everybody, right? And it'll evolve how it's meant to, and we will evolve as we're meant to in that space.
Natasha Stevens has a question.
I see Natasha Stevens' question.
And we have answers, maybe, possibly.
Anthony's
maybe,
pretty.
We're waiting on bated breath for her.
Pretty what, bro?
Anthony's advocating pretty hard here. I'm wondering.
Yeah, I'm taking a hard line stance.
Are you AI? I'm just kidding.
I was this close as we're waiting for the question. I was this close to not doing the live too because I had other work, but then I got whipped into a frenzy, and now I'm taking my hardline stance.
Yeah, what would live have been without you? Gosh,
you guys would have all been like anti-robot and anti-AI.
He's got a book. He's got a ginormous book. There's no way he couldn't be part of this.
I'll give a shout out. Life 3.0. It's a very good book because the author writes it for, like, there's different chapters for a more technical audience, and then there's chapters for a more layman, sort of armchair.
I will say too, though, like right now, Anthony, what we're doing, we are working on automating as much as we can with a lot of things. So Anthony and I are both people who very much use I'm so pro. Like my philosophy is automate, delegate, outsource. And I have one more in there. Optimize. There we go. And so that knowing full well that when you've done all the little details of nuanced things that become very repetitive, having that done for you is such a luxury, and the ability to do it, and the fact that we can as easily as we can now, like with Zapier or Zapier, it's awesome. That coding is basically at our fingertips is something that I cherish. I can see on the other side of the coin though why, one, it would be scary for programmers, and also why it would be scary for folks who are intimidated in that space as well. But it's getting easier. That's the cool thing about technology is everything about it is about making it more and more user friendly. Like it's that sort of the directive of technology, successful technology is if you can make it user friendly, it's going to get better and thrive, and it becomes more and more tangible to the average person.
That's what I'm having to. Go on, Jen.
Where does intuition come into play with AI? Because that's a big part of my coaching is tapping into my intuition. So how would a robot coach?
Okay, let's get down to the brass and taxes. What is intuition, Jen?
Yeah.
It's stuff that comes up that I don't really know where it's coming from or why it's coming, but it's there and it comes to the surface, and I offer it to my client.
So what I'm going to tell you immediately, which is kind of funny, is that if you've done a lot of look into the way our brain operates, is huge part of our thought process. Essentially, the way we take in the world is done subconsciously, and what we call intuition is actually our subconscious brain recognizing patterns and being able to pull that pattern out, and then have this, we know, because and it's all done on this awesome subconscious level of life experience. Where what I can see is if somebody, and would be a mountain of work, right? Like the idea of programming it just is overwhelming to me, but there are people that would. It becomes an if-then. If our brain is like a computer, it's running its own if-then statements all the time subconsciously. If this happens, then I should do this. If this happens, and that's where intuition comes in, is that if then done subconsciously. So in the same speak, we could program a if then, a million times, so that then that computer is going to run through its long library just the same way our brain does of this possibility, and then come out with what the best answer is or what the best question is. Which is why I was like, as I'm saying this, I know but I think that there is, again, that's why that intuition married with expertise becomes something that is very critical in this space. Did I explain that right, Anthony?
I think so.
You're not.
It kind of detracted a little bit from Jen's statement, but I've my thoughts are getting even more confused as I'm thinking more about this.
The intuition. Go ahead, Lisa. Yeah.
So yeah, I followed you every step of the way, and I feel like you nailed it pretty well. I think where the human piece comes in, and Jen's piece, is that we're going to get to the question probably a little quicker than probably that AI when we're in that deeper dive experience. But at the same time, we could get it wrong, and then AI could be just that simple question could take it. So again, I think it's going to come back to a combination that works in that space, and that combination of what that client needs in that moment. Can an AI do it? To a point, I think yes, but then there's going to be that human missing element that you, Brooke, have been speaking on. And frankly, I like the human element. I don't like someone telling me what to do. I like people being interested in what I'm saying and asking me questions so that I can build my thought process to that next step on where I want to go. Go ahead.
I think too, I think that we would be, it would be hubris to think that what we think and offer couldn't be replicated. But where I think that a machine can never fully replicate is in being an actual person. And there is a value in that. There just is a value. There's an energy. There's that something. There's that magnetic field that we exert that goes 8 feet around us that we can read innately. That you just don't get from a robot. When I walk into a room of machines, I'm not going to get the same kind of excitement and energy as I am going to get when I walk into a room full of human beings. It's just not, even if they programmed them to release pheromones, I don't care. It's not going to be the same to me.
It's that perfection element. We don't want perfection. We think we want perfection, and we really don't. Even us as coaches, if we ask the wrong question, it can still lead to artistry and go down the path of what.
Amen. By the way, amen to that, because right there, it is the imperfections that make us beautiful. Like that's that human experience, is that is what makes things unpredictable, right? And to some degree, we like unpredictable. And you're not going to get that with a robot. I like that I love that. There's a beauty there that I quite enjoy. So thank you for that, Lisa. From me, I don't know if anybody else appreciated it, but I did.
I appreciated it a lot, and it makes me think about how sometimes I'll ask a question and then I'll think to myself real quick, "Ooh, I could have gone in a completely different direction," and then I watch magic happen in front of me with my client, and I'm like, "Wow." I didn't even think that was the right question, but it was. And so I appreciated that, Lisa.
I mean, if everything was the same and it'd be boring, right? We'd be bored. Lisa,
well, there would be no growth either. There'd be no growth because that perfection is not the skill we have. We haven't been born with it, and we don't want it. We get bored with it, and yeah.
I think
to return to Natasha's question, though, we kind of glazed over that a little while ago, but she asked, with all this info, do you think the IT gurus at CLCI can begin to start finding even more material to teach, keep us abreast of this stuff, and create your own for the school that we can use? if you know it's coming, can you get out in front of it and be the forerunners of something within CLSI that no one else has done? We've kind of been doing that. I don't think AI is at the level where, we can do more than just have this kind of conversation. But, myself, Brooke, and like a lot of the other team members at CLCI, like we do our best to be at the forefront of technology. We're constantly updating our curriculum to match that as well. It used to be before COVID, I guess, coaching was only done kind of in person. Now we're learning to integrate technology more and more into coaching, and it's pretty much assumed. I feel like it's assumed that all of our coaches do coaching virtually.
And I think too, we can get out ahead of the game. I know that we've explored all kinds of options, as far as even, going out as far as building apps, programs, things like that. And these are nothing's off the table, I think, for us. The other end of the coin or flip side of that too is there's this concept we've talked about before of creating friction, and sometimes we have to exist in a realm of sort of meeting people where they're at, but also being capable of introducing them to new things. So you don't want to overwhelm. And so, like, if we were so far ahead of the ball, we would probably be incapable of helping as many people or teaching as many people as we can. So you want to find this sort of happy medium between being capable of introducing these ideas and introducing new things, but doing so in a way that is for the sake of a business and for the sake of those who our client is, in a way that they are capable of understanding and adapting and integrating into their lives and practices as well.
Mhm.
So we want to, it's a balancing act. I would say. Now on our back end side of things, like we want to automate as much as possible.
Full
So,
steam ahead. And also
yeah.
for the sake of our coaches to, embrace technology. Don't try to fight against it, because technology can save you a lot of time, especially when your business starts to pick up and you start to find a lot of success. It requires more of a time investment, and saving as much time as possible is key, in my opinion, for a very successful business.
And
Can it be an elective course?
we'll
Maybe.
work on it. We'll work on it. We hear you.
Might be something in the future. Might be like a C. Is it CCE? Is that what the ICF
Yeah,
like?
CTE, continuing
Yeah,
coaching ed, yeah. That's the thing
who
too. Also,
knows?
one of the things that you may not realize too is we will always have the human element, not only because we want it and we believe in it, but because ICF requires it. So
Mhm.
it's not going anywhere. But all right, guys, final thoughts, roundtable.
I think I would say let's here, if I can. I want to ask all of you guys, are you afraid of technology or are you not? And my stance on it is no, because it's inevitable. It's going to happen. Doing the research, even in coaching, that's something that we all can see is coming. But I think to both embrace it and then also to understand that I think personally, nothing can replace a human truly. There's just too many differences. They might, there might be a space of equality that kind of makes it seem as though it is the same, but just outright, there is no replacing a human. So I would say, kind of similar to, just really to equate to something that might be easy to understand, similar to maybe an uncertified coach and a certified coach. There's always going to be differences. Not to say necessarily one's better than the other, but there's always going to be someone looking for a certified or sometimes an uncertified coach, just like someone's always going to be looking for a human, and potentially there might be someone looking for that AI, which might be a little bit more immediate, but different than a human. So I'm not afraid. I would say embrace it and roll with the punches as it comes.
So, as someone who is older than all of you that are in this at the moment, rolling with the punches, the technology can be a challenge. If you let it stay a challenge, that's where the mistake's going to be. It is about plugging forward, getting through it, learning. I mean, every time we get a new phone, how many times is there that little bit of a learning curve? You get frustrated, you put it down, you pick it back up again, and you start that continue learning. So honor who you are, continue that learning, continue that growing, even with technology. One step small step. What is that? One step for mankind? No, one small step, and moving into that direction is one step closer than you were before. So just keep moving in that way, adapt, grow, and allow that to be a function that enhances who you are as a coach versus being something that takes away from who you are. Thanks.
I'll give my final thoughts. As far as AI coaching goes, when it's at the point that it competes with human coaches, we probably have bigger issues to worry about instead of just coaching in terms of a societal level. But also, don't discount AI coaches because they're different. Um, we, go to coaches because they can give us a third person sort of objective point of view. Maybe AI coaches could give us an even more objective point of view or even a completely different view than you wouldn't have ever expected. So just, keep it in your mind, but it's probably not that much of a problem that you have to worry about immediately.
Before Jen, before you give your answer, you're just talking about robot inclusivity, essentially.
Mhm.
And on that note, I'm going to let that dovetail into a quick mention. Next week, we will be having Natasha Stevens here, and we'll be talking about diversity and inclusion and what it means for coaching. So I just wanted to quickly mention beautifully for me. So, Jen.
We're very excited, Natasha, to have you next week. Very excited. So my final thoughts are that I think there's space for both coaches who embrace technology and coaches who don't. I think there's space for both. Personally, I do, because I think that there's still room for the people that are going to pass out their business cards and get out there in their community and do all the old school stuff. I think there's still a need for that. But yes, there is also a need for coaches to embrace technology and just automate some of the stuff, like we mentioned, that is time consuming, the scheduling, that type of thing, the intake forms. And something that I've learned with technology that always is something I like to remind people that struggle with technology is there's always a YouTube video. There's always a tutorial. You just have to go look for it. Don't get stuck spinning your wheels. Go YouTube it, how to XYZ, and it will be there. And don't forget, you always have access to that. I've gotten stuck in the past and not anymore. Now, anything I don't know, I'm like, oh, I can figure it out. I have the resources. I can figure it out.
That's that balance between resources and time, because I know recently I was getting very frustrated with some API like backend coding stuff, and I was like, I could learn this or I could hire somebody because it just reached the point where I'm like, so worst case scenario, you can always hire somebody. There's always an expert there for you too, who is looking for work probably. Beyond that too, though, in that realm and on that last note, am I scared of technology? No, I'm scared of my ability to stay up to date with it and be fresh with it. That's what I get scared of, my learning curve and my patience level, and the fact that I want to be savvy and I want to be on the pulse and I want to, but at some point, and it already has, it's going to just exponentially escape me. And I know that is inevitable. And that's what scares me, honestly. But what comforts me on the other side of things is that, again, technology is always being made easier for people to use, because that's what ultimately there is. Natasha sort of mentioned it. Who's getting the money from that? There's always a company behind it. And ultimately the company is always trying to serve or fulfill a purpose. And so whatever that may be, it's going to become easier for me to understand it at some point. Beyond that too, which is funny, the note that she says, an AI coach who gets paid. It's just an interesting thought process, because as she was sharing that, I was thinking, well, how many times have we outgrown a technology? Have we been using something that was once cutting edge or once, and it is no longer, it is now kind of old. And so we move on to something else or something better, because even technology ages and things like that. It becomes out of date and not current anymore. It suffers from the same, I guess, flaws that we as human beings suffer from. So I think that there's a little bit of comfort in knowing that we can sort of adapt as we wish and as we choose. But at some point, the most cutting edge thing in the world is going to become old and used and old technology. So I think that we have a tremendous ability to recreate ourselves and adapt, and we're not reliant on a programmer to do it. We're just relying on ourselves. And so that brings some comfort to me in knowing that. So, and I think that is all I've got. So once again, we'll be doing this next week. Natasha will be here. We will be on at 4:00 next week, Pacific Standard Time. In the meantime, make sure you check out Certified Life Coach Institute. And if you like the video, share, comment, like, and all that good stuff.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Once again, this is brought to you by Certified Life Coach Institute. We're an ICF accredited school who certifies our life coaches in 3-day online intensive courses. In addition to other podcast episodes, feel free to check us out every Tuesday at 4:00 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube or Facebook for our CLCI Lives, where we get together and discuss various topics that are centered around sharpening your skills so you can become a better certified life coach. For more information, feel free to visit us at certifiedlifecoachinstitute.com. Until next time, be well.